Hello, this is Patrick Daly and welcome to Interlinks. Interlinks is a programme about globalisation and the effects that it has had on Ireland and other countries around the world over the last 50 years or so. In each programme, we interview a person from another country or with strong connections to another country to get their unique perspective on globalisation as it has affected them and where they live and the relationship to the wider world. There's a little bit of history, a dash of economics, a sprinkling of business and an overlay of personal experience both for me and from my interviewees from around the world. In recent programmes, we've travelled back and forth across the Atlantic from Spain, Croatia and Germany on this side to the US and Mexico on the other side. Today we're coming home to Ireland to talk to Michael Kelly, a man with many years of experience doing business overseas. We've spoken before about the process of economic globalisation that has changed Ireland radically over the last 40 or 50 years, and particularly since about 1990. As Ireland became an exporting powerhouse through the 90s and 2000s, it also opened up to inbound trade as Irish businesses and consumers could afford and demand access to materials and products produced overseas. In those years, Michael ran a specialised import and distribution business in the water and fire protection markets. During that time, he built a strong business relationship with suppliers of pipes, valves and fittings in Europe as well as in China and South Korea. I'm delighted to have Michael here today in the studio to talk to us about his experiences and reflections on doing business overseas, as well as touching on some of his more social and altruistic activities. Welcome, Michael, and thank you very much for being here with us today.
Thanks, Patrick. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Michael, to kick off, could you tell us a little bit about how you got a start in life, in your work life, and how you came to be a businessman in the course of that work life and career?
Yeah, I started in the work life very, very young. Myself and a brother, God rest him, started delivering milk before we went to school for the local milkman. And I have a picture of the day I made my confirmation, or the days after I made my confirmation, I went into school.
This was here in Dublin, was it?
This in Dublin, yeah.
So the old glass bottles with the foil top, was it?
Yeah. Yeah, I could carry about 10 of them when I was in my arm. It's an art, I can assure you. Yeah, we had a 4-wheel trolley or a pram or something that we put the crates of milk on and delivered them before we went to school. At that time, you delivered milk every day, including Christmas Day. There was no differential. Every day, people were only getting fridges, and so I was expected to have milk every day of the week. And we did that before school. I have a picture. The day I made my confirmation, a couple of days later, I went into school to get a photograph taken, and I was 10. I can remember that day doing my milk run and going home and changing my clothes and putting on my school blazer and short trousers and going into school to get my photograph taken. So yeah, that was my first about 10. Yeah, I did that for a few years, and over time then you'd collect the money then at the weekend. You call on a Friday evening, and over time the milkman would trust you, and you get your own leather satchel and knock on the door, milkman and me at the door, and you'd collect a few quid. Interesting.
And then when you left school, your first kind of real job, if you want to call it that? No,
I left school. When I was 13, I went knocking on doors in Henry Street looking for summer work, as a lot of us did at that age. Yeah. And I got a job as a runner for Fitzpatrick Shoes, running around town for them on their George Street branch. And I did that till after I left school. I did that till I was 18, every Saturday and every holiday. And again, that was another experience. It was around the time I was working around the time the Talbot Street and the Monaghan bombings, but the Talbot Street bombings and that
early 70s, was it?
Yeah. I was
74, I think that was.
Yeah, I was in Dublin that day. Actually, I was working around the city as a runner that day. So interesting.
And then, at what point did you actually go into business for yourself, and how did that happen?
Simply I left school, couldn't get a job, stayed in the shoe business for a while, got a job working for Gilby's of Ireland, where they were just starting to make Baileys. Left there 4 years later and went into the pipes, valves and fittings business to be trained, and spent 10 years being trained in various roles. I worked in credit control. It's kind of a
big jump, isn't it? Shoes, drinks, pipes, valves and fittings. How does that happen?
Well, I always wanted to work in an office. That's why I left the shoe job. I wanted to work in an office, and at the time, you qualified as being a shoe salesman, and there was a apprenticeship to be done. And I did, even though I was only 18, I was on third year money or fourth year money. But I always wanted to work in an office, but I had no idea what people did in offices.
So, what was the attraction of an office?
I don't know. I just wanted to work in an office, and I got a job in Gilby's on the Nice Road, now High Harris, and I was earning £22 a week in the shoes, and I took a job at £16 a week just to get into an office. And I think the fact that I was prepared to take a 25% pay cut to take the job might have helped me get the job and show how enthusiastic I was. So that was an interesting experience. And then I left there after 4 years. I wouldn't say it's the best decision I ever made, and I went to work for a company called Lister Chew, just up behind the Red Cow Hotel in Dublin, and I spent 10 years there in various roles. I started out in credit management, and then a bit of making international payments, and then I was sales and marketing, and learned my trade really. It was a tough place to work. It was a question of throw you into the deep end and you swam or you left. But so a great training school.
So after your 10 years there, what were you in your 30s then?
I was about 33 or 4, yeah.
And is that when you went into business?
Yeah. That company was bought out by Walker Steel of the UK. It was an Irish company. It was bought by Walker Steel, Jack and Fred Walker, who owned Blackburn Rovers, and they bought the business in 1988, I think. And I just didn't see their policies working in Ireland. The company was very profitable at the time, the Lister Chews business I was working in, but UK policies in Ireland, in my view, don't work, and that was my view at the time. But I had 3 kids and I had to feed them, it was took the bold decision of remortgaging my house to 80% of its value, put it into a business, and then you've no choice. If you've 3 kids, you've no choice but to work hard, work hard.
So we're talking now in 1980s?
1990.
Yeah, 1990, okay.
1990, go up the company car and salary. And
so that was before the Celtic Tiger, wasn't it? Ireland was not in a great place at that time, was it? Ireland in terms
it wasn't.
Economically?
It wasn't economically in a very good place, but the 80s have been really tough. Yeah. And look, we started small. I got the idea that I would leave the business I was in. I didn't see a future in the business, didn't see a future for the business, and I got an idea to leave. There was only one small problem: we had no money to set up a business, and the banks weren't in that risk business, even though we tried them. So eventually we started very, very small. 2 of us, second-hand desks, a couple of chairs that were being thrown out of an office, and bought a fax, would you believe, at the time for about £1,100. Second-hand fax, £1,100. It just shows you.
I mean, was the business international from the beginning? Were there international suppliers there from the outset?
Yeah, where we'd been trained. The company I'd worked for had bought internationally, and we had contacts. Primarily, the contacts we had in the business we were intending to sell into was in the UK, but very quickly we developed into buying in Israel and buying in America and buying in Spain and buying in French francs and in France and French francs, and buying in Italy and the lira and the peseta and the French franc and sterling and US dollars, and the management of that became a big part of the business. But quickly I realised that the further away you went from the nearest island, which was the UK, the better business you did and the more profitable business you did, and the more appreciated the business was. The easy thing was to go across the UK, but to make proper margin, we moved further afield.
So when you were doing that, buying overseas, what kind of practical challenges did you face, in terms of the logistics and the finance, the people? Because, as you said, you started out very small. When you're buying from overseas, you probably need to give the supplier a letter of credit, yet you're not going to get paid by the person you're selling to in Ireland for 60 days, 90 days, whatever it is. So you've got a huge kind of financing conundrum there. How did you work your way around that?
With difficulty. Look, it wasn't. We got open account in Europe. In many cases, we got open account. When you went to, you get 30 days credit. Not the sort of credit people would expect here. If you went as far as America, we would got to a situation where we gave a letter of credit initially, but then it was then we got a standby letter of credit, and worked our way into a situation where if you paid people on time, and which a lot of people in Ireland didn't at the time, if you paid people on time, build a credit reputation and have a bit of honour about you. And then when we went to China, it was the same as it is today. It's 30% with order, and it's 70% when you cite of bill of lading. So heavy going on the cash flow. So there has to be margin in it to pay the banks the finance fee, but the margin was in it as we proved over a period of time. If what the bank gave us money at the time, Bank of Ireland Finance gave us money at the time, it was expensive money, and the interest rates were high and the charges were high, but without that money we couldn't make money. We'd no money to make money, but even though it was expensive money, we found a way of making money on the back of that. Yeah,
and suppose you developed a lot of expertise then in working with, because there was no single market at that point, so everything had customs regulations and declarations and whatnot. Yeah. So what a lot of companies, a lot of that knowledge, I guess, was lost in the economy here with people working with European countries, and a lot of companies are going to have to learn that again now, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Yeah. You have to open your mind and keep ahead of the posse and whatever the challenges are, and control the controllables, and those things that are outside your controls. You have to work with them.
Adapt to them. Yeah.
Pardon? You have to adapt to them, and every market you go into to buy. We were buying and selling. You have to adapt to what's happening in that particular country and see if it fits with you. And whatever way they do business, they're not going to change radically for somebody in Ireland. And we were never going to be the biggest customer purely by the fact that we had the population we have here, but we always wanted to be a good customer. We wanted to be reliable, we wanted to give consistency of order, we wanted to be honourable, and most importantly, we wanted to pay people on time, and that stood to us because we built a reputation for doing good business. Good business. We'd fight over the discount, we'd fight over the delivery, we'd fight over the quality of the literature, but we always paid on time or before that date, and that at the time was most unusual for Ireland, but it suited my personality, not the way I was trained, but it suited my personality to do that, and it works. It works.
So in terms of, you mentioned in those early days countries such as Israel, Spain, some Asian countries, what kind of cultural challenges did you meet in doing business with those countries at that time?
Look, the first time I went to Israel, I didn't know where I was going. I went to Singapore and I didn't really know what I was doing or where I was going. And I went on a trip to China in 1997, and it's a journey into the unknown. And as I said earlier, it's how would I put it? Everywhere is a challenge. Everywhere is the language. Language isn't really the problem. It's the culture. The language is okay because in a lot of these places they speak English. I don't speak any foreign languages, so they speak English, and but they're all different, all different. And travelling then isn't like it's travelling today,
Any funny anecdotes from those trips?
Yeah, I didn't like Israel for no particular reason. I thought they were lovely people, they were great business people, they had great products, but there was too many guns under the people's arms. And you get on the bus and there's half a dozen people with submachine guns under their arm because they're all part in the army. I didn't like that. Going to China was challenged no matter where you went because the business people spoke English, other people didn't speak English, so to get from A to B was a challenge. But one thing I did do, I went to China and 3 or 4 times after I was there, I was going to see a company, and the girl I was dealing with very good English, but she wasn't going to be there, so the guys, business people over there, the owners, they don't speak English, and I don't speak Mandarin or Cantonese, so they hired an interpreter who was a young lady straight out of college working as a teacher, but she was just doing an Ixer, as we'd call it here in Dublin, doing an Ixer. And she was mad keen just to use the English that she had learned, all the English that she had learned. So she was working for them. They had employed her, but I slipped her the equivalent of $20, and she was on my side. So from the business point of view, when we were around the table, she could tell me what they were saying when we were having discussions about price and what was going on, and they thought she was in their pocket, but €20 or $20 went a long way. Culturally, they're not bad people, but at the time they only wanted to sell a container. If they got an order, they weren't concerned with what the quality was, as long as they got their LC and got paid. If you had trouble quality-wise, they weren't too concerned. But that has changed. They're now interested, and have been for a long number of years, doing long-term business, same as we want to do long-term business, But it's cash, 30% with the order and 70% on site and letter credit. And Ireland, if you get paid at 60 days or 90 days, you're thankful. So as your earlier comment was, to balance the books, to get the cash flow was a challenge, an ongoing challenge, as it is for most businesses.
Yeah.
But said Israel didn't particularly take to it, being there, you wouldn't get a whole lot into Israel without them knowing, but the questions they ask you and coming back out and getting it. But they all have a challenge. The Chinese is a challenge, but it's a lot easier now than it was. You have mobile phones now, you have emails now, you've got planes to go on time.
Yeah, I guess this thing, and particularly the China thing, China opening up in the 80s and 90s, where it started, to today, where they're kind of the workshop of the world, and they've got huge export going on, but to such an extent that even President Trump is upset about the imbalance in trade between the United States and China. And all of that is a manifestation of this phenomenon of globalization that we've seen over the last 30, 40 years. So we're seeing a bit of kickback against that now with Donald Trump and the protectionism, with Brexit, with rising nationalism around Europe in particular. What's your own view on globalization? Is it a positive thing? Is it a negative thing? Where do you see it going?
Oh, look, it's a positive thing in my view. Globalisation, we've all to learn from other people. We all have competitors. There's nobody in the world that hasn't got a competitor. My personal view would be that Mr. Trump is going to have a difficult job, because that boat has sailed. If the people in China can make a quality product, as they can in my business, with world approvals, whether it be Canadian, American, German or UK approvals, quality products, and they can make a valve and sell it for €50, and the Americans used to make them, haven't made them for a long time, and it's going to cost €150 in America. No matter what Mr. Trump does or what taxes he imposes, he has an uphill struggle. I was with a company a little bit over 2 years ago in China, and they employ 7,200 people, highly automated, cheap labour, world approvals on our products. They work 6 days a week, and the average salary is $400 a month. We can't compete with that. People in America can't compete with that. So if they have cheap labour, one thing, they have highly automated and good systems, good procedures, looking after their people, and all the world approvals on their products. It's very hard to compete. It's very hard to compete for us to compete, or someone in America to compete with that. And the Chinese are renowned for copying products, but they're well past that. Very clever people over there, well past when they need to get a product in Europe, bring it out and make a clone of it. They're in all ends, no matter what it is. They're clever people. They have a strong work ethic. They are available anytime you want them. They'll communicate with you by WhatsApp, or they'll communicate with you by QQ is their equivalent, by text message, by email, by Skype. They'll do it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You send them an email today, you'll get a reply tomorrow. They'll answer every question. They're highly trained. A number of years ago here, there were 3 million university students were coming out of Chinese universities every year. That was a number of years ago. So they're hungry.
Mm-hmm.
They're hungry.
Mm-hmm.
Very hard to compete. Very hard to compete with that. But it's not only China. There's other countries as well are on the horizon, and but we have to be aware of what's going out there. And
so this is a threat in a way for Ireland. So here we benefited greatly from foreign direct investment, multinationals and so on. I think a lot of your customers in your pipes, valves and fittings business were multinationals that you supplied here with the equipment that they needed, and that all went on through the 90s and the 2000s, and we did very well. So where do you see Ireland's future success lying in the face of this kind of competition from abroad, from places like China? What does our government need to do, and what should Irish business owners be thinking about doing?
Look, I think the government are doing a lot of things right. I think the IDA have done an excellent job over the last 30 or 40 years getting American corporations coming into Ireland, whether it be the Googles or the Intels or the Hewlett Packards or the pharmaceutical companies. They've done a tremendous job. In the particular, and I hope they continue to do that, and the signs are they have Facebook spending massive money on data centres, and there's more on the horizon. I was reading over the weekend, there's more data centres on the horizon. Yeah, but in China, in my particular business, it's a lot of it is foundry work. It's cast iron, as you would understand. There's actually ductile iron valves, and it's dirty. It's dirty business, and it's not environmentally very good. So from a European point of view, we didn't want that in Europe. We brought in legislation from an environmental point of view. You can't do it in Ireland. So we sent that to China. And now the Chinese are, and I'm sure the legislation is the same in America, the Chinese are now making it. But even in China now, they're pushing that 3 miles from the major cities, 3 hours drive from the major cities, because it's high in pollution. And, but now the Irish government have done a tremendous job. Look at the American investments, look at our exports. Because of that, look at the money that's been spent, look at what's on the horizon with Intel going into next year, something like $7 billion on the horizon for Intel next year. Lots of jobs in that. Data centres, 300 or 400 or 500 people employed when they're being built, but not big employers of people. You know, a big data centre might employ 90 or 100 people. So, you know, once it's up and running. But the IDA have done tremendous work. Look at all the pharmaceutical companies we have in this country. Very, very strong, selling them over. Originated, a lot of them started in Cork, down in Little Island, and they're around the country as well, and we have lots and lots of them, and I hope that continues. Big employers. Look at Intel, 5,000 people. But as I said to you about the company I was with in China, they've 7,200 people. So, and the cities in China that we've never heard of, and they've 10 or 15 million people or 20 million people.
Yeah, it's extraordinary.
So we're not in scale of things, we're small, you know.
Yeah. One of the things that I've been hearing through the media and the news and so on is a risk that if Britain crashes out of the EU, there's a hard Brexit, a lot of particularly the food products that we import will be subject to tariffs coming from the United Kingdom, which will drive inflation and so on. And it seemed to me that was almost like a kind of a passive response, doing nothing and just swallowing that. But the story you've told us here today is from the very beginning of having gone far and wide in search of suppliers. What should Irish importers today, who have always only imported from the United Kingdom, what should they be doing instead of just swallowing the tariff and the inflation that will come from it?
Well, I think the question really should be, what should Irish exporters be doing, small companies who are exporting? And if the big percentage of our business, as in many cases, is in the UK, it's long past the time when they should be going further afield.
That's a good point.
And that's really where, you know, if we're exporting and you're exporting into the UK and there's 60 million over there, there's a world out there. Imagine if you get a product into China where there's 1.2 or 1.3 billion people. You know, you only need a very, very, very small fraction of 1% to generate that. So if you're looking just to the UK, it's easy, it's short gallop across. But, you know, you can bring in a container of product from China at the minute for 20-foot container for less than €1,800. You know, how much does it cost to go from the UK in here? It's a big, expensive stretch of water. So while we're importing is one situation, but the exports, I think, concern for the food industry, and I think some of the bigger food companies, Kerry Foods, etc., are wise enough. They've been selling worldwide for a long time, and Irish businesses need to do that. You shouldn't have any more than market really 10 or 15% of your business going into any country, and anyone that's selling 60 or 70% or 80% of their business into the UK, it's long past the time.
They're just not diversified enough, right?
Not diversified enough, and Irish people are well able to travel, so we should be sourcing other markets, and I'm sure some of the government bodies would help people do that, but it's long past the time, because we can't be dependent on the UK market because we don't know where it is, and the uncertainty surrounding it at the minute is shocking.
Yeah, I guess where importers and exporters find each other. So when you were looking for foreign suppliers, where did you go? I guess you went to trade shows around the world. Is that a good place to?
Pardon?
Is that a good place to start for people?
Yeah, trade shows are a great place to start because you find out what's going on in other markets and you learn and they learn from you. It's a great place, and we used to go to trade shows, and some were good and some were bad, and you'd find something, but it was a question of walking the halls. Like, obviously the internet's a great friend, but it's also your worst enemy, and let me explain that. Anyone can do a web page, a very, very good web page. That doesn't mean the substance behind that.
Sure.
So when I go to China, I only do business in China when I've seen the factory, and I've had some disastrous visits where they say they're making product, and when you go knocking on the door and you go inside, you realise, having spent a day or two travelling, that within 5 or 10 minutes this is not what they want it to be. So the only way, in my view, to do business in China, buying or selling, particularly buying, is to make sure they have a factory, because they'll promise you the sun, moons and the stars, but then salesmen are like that all over the world, I think exporting, imagine if something like Bailey's took off big time in China, Bailey's are, imagine what they could do, what they could do out there, the pure volume of people, you just think it's and until you go out there and see them, you don't realise, we talk about $1 billion or 1.2 or 1.3 billion, now they're 1.2 billion or 1.3 billion, but now they have money. A lot of people out there have money to spend, so anyone selling high-end products, in my view, is the place to be. I don't know about India. I understand India's good as well, but I haven't been there.
Okay, so in the last few minutes, maybe we'll talk about a few things that are maybe outside the world of work. I think you told me that one of the things you like to do is mentoring young people. I was interested to know how you do that and why it's important to you.
It's important to me because I want to give back. It's important to me because I think we have a duty of care as we get older to help people, to help young people, and to help them and guide them and direct them. It's important to me because it's a tough world out there for young people. They have everything and at the same time they have nothing, in my view. They haven't got something that I think everybody in the world really struggles with at this stage, is peace of mind. They don't seem to be content. I enjoy doing it. I primarily do it with young people at this stage, with young people who are from overseas, not for any particular reason other than they've just fallen into that. I know quite a number of people from Romania and Poland, India, and they're looking for career advice. They're well qualified, they're nice people, they have a strong work ethic, and I've kind of half fallen into being able to mentor a number of them and get them jobs in the area in which they're qualified. That's they have a lot of qualifications. They come to Ireland, they don't have the English at a level that they can go into their profession. Sometimes the qualification they have doesn't transfer when they come to Ireland, and they need a little bit of guidance on how to manage that. It's something I do. I don't plan to do it every day, but I probably do it most days, and it's immensely rewarding. It's immensely rewarding. I get far more out of giving than I do in the people who I'm giving to. It's immensely rewarding, and I was always taught when I was growing up, give back, give to people, it'll come back to you, and my mother always said that. So I think somewhere along the way I picked up that give back. You can't take it with you, you can't take it with you. So and I think we have a duty as we get older to take care of those young people in a difficult world for them, in my view.
So great to have you here, Michael. It's been a pleasure as always to talk to you about the long career that you've had, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much for being here today.
It's been a pleasure for me too. Thanks, Patrick. All the best.
Bye bye.